So, for those of you who haven't heard, the Survivalist gadget in Battlefield Hardline was reworked from its original anti-bullet mechanic into a new anti-explosive mechanic. I'm going to explain why this is terrible. So I've made several videos addressing Battlefield Hardline's progress and have talked about Survivalist on multiple occasions. While I acknowledged that a self-revive mechanic warranted scrutiny and potentially removal, I also found most of the complaints people lobbied about Survivalist to hold no weight. Most of the arguments I encountered were people complaining that they now had to babysit every corpse out of concern that it might revive, and that dramatically slowed down the gameplay, which made no sense because of the massive list of alerts the player was given about if an enemy had Survivalist or not. The next major argument was that it encouraged people to play selfishly, an argument I debunked at length in another previous video. But now we come to what Survivalist was changed into. It used to revive a player who died from non-headshot and non-explosive deaths. Now, the new version doesn't revive people from gunshots, but instead revives people from explosions, so it'll revive you after stepping on a trip mine or dying to a grenade or C4. This causes a problem because Survivalist was shifted from mostly visual contact kills to largely indirect kills. If someone walks over your trip mine and you weren't staring at it, you now need to go and inspect the corpse to make sure it wasn't a medic and he's not reviving himself. If you threw a grenade and got a kill but don't know what class he was, now you actually do need to go check on the body. Let's compare this to the old Survivalist and its list of tells. Only a medic could revive himself. Medics had distinct weapons and uniforms, meaning it was obvious who was a medic and who was not, and you had this information on visual contact. Enemies that had Survivalist, when shot, would flail their arms into the air and fall onto their back, offering a unique, large, and obvious death animation that told you if they were or were not using Survivalist, even if they fell down behind cover. Enemies that died with Survivalist would still show up on the minimap as live targets. Enemies that died with Survivalist would spasm violently on the ground before reviving. 3 out of 4 of these tells are nullified without visual contact. When shooting someone, you usually have the necessary visual contact, and when fighting the previous Survivalist iteration, you would have at least 2, usually all 4, of the aforementioned warnings. But now, if you don't have visual contact with the explosive kill, which when using trip mines or grenades is going to be often, you actually do need to check the body. So the old Survivalist, which took almost no time and effort to identify and respond to, has been replaced with a mechanic that actually does require corpse inspection and actually slows down gameplay, when the biggest complaint people lobbied about it in the first place was that it slowed down gameplay.
Golf clap. Golf clap.
The disturbing part is that some people seem rather happy with this. With the amount of obvious tells that Survivalist in its original form had, I would hypothesize that if the first beta had continued for another few weeks and people had more time to adapt to recognizing these tells, Survivalist would have been adjusted to and turned most of its users into free arrests, as it did for players like myself, whom had no difficulty recognizing and dealing with Survivalist-using players. But now, Survivalist embodies the very thing it was criticized for, and on non-visual kills, most of its alerts have been effectively removed, meaning that Survivalist was buffed significantly. But because explosive kills are less common than bullet kills, some people are happy with the change. So apparently it's okay to have a mechanic that's much worse and actually does slow down the gameplay if it occurs a little less frequently and thus requires less situational awareness from someone in a competitive game. There's no shortage of old comments on Reddit and the Hardline community's most wanted list of people talking about how Survivalist was overpowered because they needed to babysit every corpse in case of revive. These comments were blatantly false. You didn't need to babysit every corpse. You were given all the information you needed to take advantage of the situation and score an arrest or a free kill, and not waste your time on false alarms. How were these guys still a challenge for you? Why was it so insurmountable a task to look for tips on fighting Survivalist if you were struggling with it? It probably would have taken less time than writing out paragraphs in a Reddit comment complaining that it was overpowered. But now, when an explosive kills someone and you don't have visual contact information, you do need to perform an inspection, because if someone steps on a trip mine and you're not staring at it, you don't know what class they are or what their death animation was. The Survivalist change made it more powerful and its mechanics worse, not better, and I'm rather disgusted seeing people willing to endorse a mechanic they claim to abhor if it'll mean they can be more lazy in a competitive game. That tells me they never thought through gameplay pacing and mechanics balance. They just died a lot, and if a gameplay change means that situation won't occur as often, it's automatically an upgrade. I hope this isn't the final form of Survivalist, and I'm a bit concerned about Hardline's future. Insert end of video pandering here. I'll see you next time.